What do most people and some leaders get wrong about trust?
That it can be rebuilt pretty easily with "I'm so sorry." That sometimes what people say, I didn't mean it that way." You have to be really aware of maybe it's not what you meant, but it's how it was interpreted, and that matters. I don't use the examples that were soul crushing to me in this book because I don't wanna leave a legacy behind of all the terrible stories, of all the terrible things that happened to me as a teacher. However, lessons that are in the book are certainly based on that. And it comes down to when I think about one of those examples was one sentence made by one leader that changed so much for me. And it had such a huge impact that I'll never forget it. I'll never forget how that person made me feel. Feeling valued is important to me. So you go somewhere where you do feel valued, and that matters.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, Jorge Valenzuela.
This is education coach Jorge Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it.
My name is Dr. Jorge Valenzuela, and we're here today with an incredible educator and leadership expert, my new friend, Dr. Delia Racines. Delia is the author of Trust as the Core of Instructional Leadership, and she's someone I've been wanting to get on this show for a while now. I first came across Delia's work through Instagram and her book. Her message hit me hard. She's talking about trust, not just as a buzzword, but as the real foundation for school leadership. Delia, much respect to you. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for that kind introduction. It's really nice to get a chance to meet you and talk about all things trust.
For anyone watching, if you don't know Dr. Delia Racines, you have to follow her. She's going to be tagged on all the assets for this episode. She is someone you can tell through her posts, through her graphics, through her videos. Her sincerity speaks volumes. I appreciate you being on here.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot to me, and certainly, like, my work has been, like, my life journey, I'd say, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that it resonates with you and that the message of not only my book, but what I sent out there to the universe, that it speaks to you in some way.
We have something in common. You are a solution tree author, and so am I.
Yeah.
How did that journey begin with them?
On accident, I'd say. I never intended on becoming an author. I had shared my story with a different editor. I thought it would, like, not for real.
Mm.
Nowadays, you're like, "Is this for real? Is this legit? Like, what is this kinda email?"
That was that, Sarah?
No, it was actually from a completely different publishing company.
Gotcha.
And, they had read my story about my background because if you know anything about me, you know I never intended on becoming a teacher ever. My background's actually criminology. So this person had reached out and wanted me to share my journey in criminology to school. So more of like a school to prison pipeline. Like,
Oh, wow.
I know that while that is ultimately like my why, like why I do what I do, it wasn't necessarily like the story I wanted to come out of the pocket with, if that makes sense to you. Like, although I have really funny friends who will introduce me when I do Solution Tree,
Mhm.
who are like, and she went to prison. I'm like, come on, we can talk about that later. But certainly it was voluntarily there, by the way. So, let's make sure that's really clear on this podcast. But one of the things that they had asked me to do was to share that journey and that relationship to education. But I was like, nah. And so it really became about like, what do I want to share out to the world? And
Mhm.
it's based on the work that I had just finished up in Orange County that they had asked me to create a coaching program for them, which I did, exploded, and I won the Shirley Hort Award through Learning Forward for it.
For folks out there that don't know what that is.
Yeah, Learning Forward, if you don't subscribe or read educational journal, you should read that one because Learning Forward has been around for a long time. And I'd say they're up there with Solution Tree in terms of just reliable, credible, trustworthy research. And so they've been an organization that I have always been a part of when I taught in Fairfax County. And they really resonated with me. But they had an award that I was like, these folks are doing such amazing work. I've been with them for 2 years. I was a stranger to them. They didn't know me. And they just made huge gains in their student outcomes. And so I shared their story for the Shirley Hort Award. And we won. I got that call and I was like, "We did?" Like, jarring because I've always looked up to that organization. So to be recognized by them
And that opened the doors for you, right?
It really did. And we flew up to Canada and picked up that award. And that was just,
It's
um,
funny how that works.
it was an amazing trip and a journey. And it's just one that I will never forget. Yeah.
You mentioned Fairfax County. Are you in Virginia?
Born and raised in Virginia. That's what I was like, maybe we're related. I don't know. But like, I am from the DMV area, born and raised in Alexandria, Virginia. So only people that are from the DMV totally understand if I'm like, I'm from the DMV.
I live in Richmond, Virginia.
Do you really?
I live in Midlothian, right outside of Richmond. Yeah.
Were you born in Virginia?
No, I'm from New York. I'm from Queens, New York, born and raised, and then Long Island. And then after college, I came down this way.
That's crazy. Yeah, I taught in Fairfax County schools. I went to Fairfax County schools. I'm a product of, I went to Herndon Middle Schools where I taught, but I graduated from Mount Vernon. So let's go Patriots there. Is people that I meet from George Mason to where I graduated from for my doctorate.
All my instructional coaches, all my instructional leaders, I want you to now really pay close attention. Delia has a book. It's called Trust as the Core of Instructional Leadership. And that title alone is bold, Delia. What made you center trust as the non-negotiable in your leadership work?
Solid question, George. Well, I played around with the title a lot, I'd say, because I always circled back to trust. It didn't matter what else was included or taken out. It had to be trust because I'd say all the experiences that led up to the purpose of writing the book, I always ask myself, like, what was it about working with that either terrible leader or amazing leader that I was blessed to have as a first year teacher in Herndon Middle School? Like, what made it amazing? Anytime I thought about what was it, even in my career in criminology, because I had a lengthy one before I became a teacher, my boss was John Walsh. I work for the National Center for Missing Children. So when I think about all these amazing leaders I got to work with, and it always came back to trust. It was trust that allowed me to feel safe and valued and a place where I wanted to grow and that I made a difference. I also thought, though, that once I became an assistant principal, ultimately after a coach out here on the West Coast. But once you land in those positions, I think a lot of it is about like getting the position, right? Like, oh, you got it, you landed it. And I simply that now. People are like, all right, you're going to get it. You got this. I really wanted my book to serve as a thought partner for you because I do feel like you're alone. And sometimes you feel like, so what do I do now? And to ensure that it's not just steps and rhetoric and theory and all this stuff that we know as researchers, what really matters, and that's trust, but how do you build it? And what's an example? And give me something that I'm going to remember that matters. And that for me will always be trust. Everything that you build should be built on the strong foundation of trust, because really, when I think down to it, it really doesn't matter what you know, who you know. If people don't trust you, you got a whole lot of nothing. I also thought like the book probably should have been called like "Don't Be a Jerk." And I was like, I've got to make sure it's serious because it is a serious topic and it matters a lot to me. It matters a lot. So I wanted to make sure that this topic matters a lot to instructional leaders, both aspiring and current, and revamp if they have to with very specific ways on how to do it.
The reason why I think your book is so important, the way you center trust, is because a lot of the leaders I meet, especially new leaders, they think they have to earn respect. And what they don't realize is that in every organization, some people have positional power, some have organizational power. People that have organizational power are people that have been there a long time. They've earned respect. So the organization respects them and has elevated them.
Yeah.
But some people have positional power, meaning that their power is because of their position.
Right.
They don't have to assert that authority in the beginning. They need to earn trust. So they think they have to earn respect, but what they really have to earn is trust. One of the things I think is important to do is to never hit the ground running, hit it listening. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors.
We had the pleasure of listening to George this morning on project-based learning, and he shared his story that his aunt encouraged him to go into education. And she was absolutely right. He is so talented at sharing information in a way that is easy to digest and is inspiring to go back and actually implement and make change.
So my takeaway is that Mr. Valenzuela was very inspiring. He was very motivational and helped me to think about a new way of getting my teachers excited.
When I set out to do a workshop, my key deliverable is energy. And this momentum is used to make connections, inspire, educate, and ultimately transform the audience, so that they're compelled to take that same energy back to their schools and communities. And although we have fun, we tackle the hard topics of today, like educational policy, pedagogy for improving curriculum and instruction, and empowering today's students by connecting our work to the needs of the workforce. So please consider Lifelong Learning Defined for your next keynote, workshop, or conference, and overall instructional and educational coaching needs. My name is George, and I hope to connect with you soon.
We would love to have him come and do some work with us and help us be a little more successful and help our students to be more successful.
Here's my next question, because I know that the instructional leader watching this, they need your help right now, okay? What should a leader that's new in a building where there's no trust and they have to earn it, what should they do in the first 30 days?
Nothing but listen. Happens too quick is do all the things, but like exactly like what you said, it's one of the coaching mantras actually that I live by. We want to jump out of the gate and prove ourselves like I'm worthy of this position. I also remember being kind of reminded like, hey, P.S., you got the job. And you're like, oh yeah, you got to slow down. You have to remember, why did you get the job? And remember that first. I think we're so ready to like solve the problems of the world. But I also think it's important to remember and learn the history. You're most likely, unfortunately, you have to remember and realize not the very first person in that position. Very long history of people in that position. And perhaps the first 10 ideas that you have already been tried. You have to do your homework. If you're wise, you're doing your homework before the interview, which is probably what got you the job in the first place.
Right.
But I also think once you're in and you're past the gate, right? You're in the gate, you're there, you're in the arena now. Learn as much as you can and talk to people, because for every side of the story that you hear from one teacher or one faculty member or one staff member or one parent, there's a whole other side. Listen and understand before you make a judgment call. So that's my other coaching mantra, which is assuming positive intentions in everybody that you talk to. In both of those, and say would be where I would start. And being yourself, you got the job. You got the job. So remember that.
Delia, we hear a lot about instructional leadership in theory, but it often gets lost in the day-to-day in schools. What does it actually look like to lead instruction with trust at the core?
I like what you said there. I'd have to say too often, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, you're going to get that very simple directive of be trustworthy. Go out there, make sure people see you, right? It's one of the first pieces of advice I think you get if you pick up like any leadership book. And it's also not to negate the leadership books that are out there, because they certainly taught me a lot. And as I conducted my research for this book, it was really prevalent throughout every piece. But that's almost too simple of a directive. It's not just about being out there and being visible. Don't be in your office, right? You hear all these, and I'm sure as you're listening, like your head nodding, right? So I'm watching your head nod, like, yeah, I've heard that before. Also important, right? Making sure your people are agreeing with you, making sure that they're being heard and valued. But I'd say it's also about approachability at first, because be visible. That is actually chapter 1, right? Being visible and approachable, because visible alone is not enough. And I always think of the example of when I was not in a leadership position and trying to approach the leader and being like, never mind, you turn because they look busy, or rejection.
I've been there. It's the worst feeling
in the world.
Yeah. That's not an approachable person. They're not going to be successful long-term, making people feel that way.
wonder sometimes if they're even conscious of it, maybe it's not ill intended. And that's why I say assume positive intentions. Maybe they're on their way to, like, I don't know, there's a fire in the room. You never know. You don't. But at the same time, like, being very conscious of it, because your approachability matters almost as much, I'd say, as your visibility. And people know if you're not completely present in that you're like, please don't ask me any questions. Please don't. Like, I'm just going to wave and pass by and, like, adios. Right. So that matters. And I think it's palpable too. People feel that. People are like, oh, so what's the point then? If you're not able to be approachable, then people are not going to come to you. And that's an immediate, I don't know if I trust that person. Like, they don't want to hear from me, and it's just tiny little micro interactions that happen that either build trust or take it away from you in like a millisecond that might not even have been intended that way. It matters a lot. And so I think being really aware of it, and that is why I came out of the gate with that for chapter 1. It's really important to be really conscious of it.
What do most people and some leaders get wrong about trust?
That it can be rebuilt pretty easily with I'm so sorry. And I also think that sometimes what people say, I didn't mean it that way. You hear that time and you have to be really aware of maybe it's not what you meant, but it's how it was interpreted. And that matters, might be.
Yeah.
I don't use the examples that were soul crushing to me in this book, because I don't want to leave a legacy behind of all the terrible stories, of all the terrible things that happened to me as a teacher. However, lessons that are in the book are certainly based on that. And it comes down to, when I think about one of those examples, was one sentence made by one leader that changed so much for me. And it had such a huge impact that I'll never forget it. I'll never forget how that person made me feel. And that is just infused to the whole book because it matters so much.
What was the sentence?
It was that they felt I didn't really want to be at that school. And that was at a school that I had been at and for a very long time. And I was blown away. I was like, what? It was shocking to me. And I was like, wow, really? I had no idea where that came from. Later, of course, I learned, I found out, and then I think that was the last year of me in that school. And I was happy to leave because I didn't feel valued. And it comes back to, like, to fit sometimes. Research will tell you, maybe it's not the right fit. And it wasn't. And that's also okay. So you take that and you go, what did I learn from this? Feeling valued is important to me. So you go somewhere where you do feel valued, and that matters.
You want to hear a good one?
Yeah.
As you know, both you and I contribute to Edutopia's blog, and we've been writing for a long time. We were writing before AI. My blogging journey started back in 2015, 2016, and I was writing for an organization, and an editor looked at one of my articles. He said to me in person, he said, "You're not really good at this. It's not for you. Leave it alone." And that was the feedback. And I was completely crushed, but I felt like I had something to say.
Yeah.
I met another editor at ISTE. She's no longer there, Mrs. Diana Fingal. And Diana said, "You have a lot of knowledge, but it's a lot of information. It's all over the place. And our audience can't receive this like this. But I'll work with you and I'll coach you. I think we can get 2-3 articles out of this 5-page thing."
Amazing.
And we started working together. And into the 10th article, she said to me, "I think you can write a book on your content area on robotics and computational thinking." She introduced me to the editor at ISTE, which is now ISTE and ASCD. Emily basically held my hand and helped me figure out how to do my proposal. It took 6 months. Make a long story short, when I started writing, I didn't think I would write a book, but I wrote it in my journal as something that I want to do. And I wrote down that I want to be a contributor to Edutopia. In 2020, I became an author. And in 2019, Diana herself introduced me to one of the editors at Edutopia.
Awesome. Oh, that's amazing.
It took a little while, but I got paired with an editor named Marva Hinton. I'm not sure if you know Marva. Big shout out to Marva. She's in North Carolina. And Tom Berger, who's the editor, paired me with her. She is the one that is responsible for helping me find my voice and make my writing conversational. So I know how you feel.
Yeah, and that matters. And you'll never forget that, right? Like, get that. And the other amazing thing about your story is I'll mention this because you said it. This really resonates with self-study research. It's another like bracket of research methodology that I study. And my Russell will tell you that there is validity and authority in your experience. And no one can invalidate that.
I'm only sharing that because you reminded me of it. But there's someone listening that needs to hear that. That's at the beginning of that journey that maybe read your article or read your book and they want to start. They don't have that full confidence yet. So,
Yes. So we're here to tell them to just do it because everybody needs to, right? I always feel like everyone that I meet has a story to share, right? And story has validity in it based on their experience, right? Like everyone's experience and journey is so unique. We all have something to learn from one another, and remove the judgment piece of it. If it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. If it does, it does. And what else could you take away from it? What did you gain? There's always something to gain in every conversation that we have because they all matter.
yeah. And every educator, whether you're a leader or a teacher, you should be blogging about your experiences. Just write about things that you're doing in your classroom or in your leadership role. You never know. We need more stories.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I'm writing for Edutopia, I think was really fun too. I think for me that opened a lot of doors to better know that what I was writing about resonated with someone else
Mm.
or from people that were like, yeah, like me too. It's so funny that I also sound like, oh God, this sounds so dumb coming out of my mouth, right? But once you write a book or like once you write something to know that someone's going to read it, like there's someone sitting in the world reading your book, reading your article, and you're like, oh no. But then you go, awesome. Like they resonated with it. And when they share with you how it resonates with them, that's the part that is so rewarding. I don't know about you when you hear from people that it's just like, that's amazing. Like, I love that.
Now for a word from one of our sponsors. I move around a lot of schools and we're seeing a huge disconnect. A lot of teachers that have come from non-traditional pathways, especially in the past few years. And so just interactions, expectations is really the first step. All of my teachers, raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my students. All of my administrators, all my directors, all my principals, all my coordinators, raise your hands, please, your right hand, and repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my faculty and staff. Thank you. It is such an amazing feeling when you're at some event somewhere. Someone walks up to you afterwards. They have their phone open and they show you the article that you wrote like 4 years ago. And this helped me stay in teaching. This helped me teach my kids. This helped me think about things in a different way. That to me is really what it's all about. I'm also a PhD like you. One of the things they taught us in the program, folks that don't know the difference between an EDD and a PhD. The PhD has to create knowledge, new knowledge, has to look at what's been done in a topic, but they have to create something new. So they have to do their own research design and then collect data and then unpack it and explain it. And because PhD students learn how to create knowledge after they earn their PhD, we are expected to still create knowledge so that we can contribute to our profession. My audience is not always academia. So the best way for me to get my ideas out there and to contribute to our profession is through Edutopia. Delia, you and I both care about emotional intelligence. So let's go there today.
Okay.
How does emotional intelligence connect to trust? And how do leaders practice it, not just preach it?
You have a book called Project-Based Learning, of which I read. I read your book too. See, I actually like different, so many notes in here. Whoa. But it's really the plus to your PBL that speaks to me when I think about trust and how trust lends itself to your work.
The plus wasn't just branding.
That's why I loved it. That's a solid piece there.
I was at a district office. I was responsible for STEM and computer science. Our district did instructional innovation, where we would visit classrooms and then We would collect data, action research, then design PD based on the data. In addition to my own content area, this was part of my responsibility at central office. I realized after we got our core instruction right, innovative teaching, project-based learning, I realized that we were asking teachers to do stuff we didn't know how to do ourselves. So I joined the Buck Institute for Education, which at that time was the PBL leader in the universe. I joined that team and I became a master teacher, a master PBL coach as well. Part of the program was them sending me around the country, which I was okay with, but my intention was for my district job. Well, anyway, that turned into a whole new career, lots of PBL workshops and lots of data collections. The plus is what's happening right now. The plus is what teachers in those data collections back then told me needed addressing, like emotional intelligence, life skills, right? Things like that. And then the plus is everything else, AI integration, career pathways, whatever's happening. So that way, any new editions of the book will still be named the same, but it'll have whatever's happening now.
And that's what I liked about your book. Not that I don't like project-based learning, because you're including what matters to trust a lot. And my question was like, what does a trust-based PBL plus school look like? Because you include it and why it's important for kids, it also elevates the conversation about why it's so important for instructional leaders too.
Yeah.
I like the plus. I feel like it's like a trust plus in my book, making sure that leaders have a handbook on how to do that, because it doesn't come as easy as you think. Because sometimes I think we hear like, I invited them. You didn't say anything, right? And it can't be that. We can't leave it at that. But it's also, that's not ill-intended all the time either. But so then what do you do?
That's why in the book, I believe it's chapter 3, it's the empathy map. Because how can you empower people that you don't know?
And I thought that was kind of cool. Inviting all voices really matters. And you talk about that and including people. I think there's a lot of parallels in our book, which I thought was pretty interesting when I was reading your book, because I was like, yeah, that totally aligned to trust. And it might not be super obvious. I think when you think of like project-based learning plus in trust, or even vice versa, you don't think of PBL immediately when you think of trust as a core of instructional leadership. But I do think there are parallels between them and they connect, because one also can't exist without the other.
And if we use our emotional intelligence skill of empathy, if we use empathy, we are getting to know people,
Right.
whether students, whether teachers, other leaders. If we lead them, our purpose is to learn about them so we can empower them.
Yes.
We learn too. Well, we learn twice, because as we're learning about them and we're learning our own role, we learn the things that we don't know.
That's one of the reasons I made sure that chapter 4 was, the instructional component piece. And that's why I specifically add instructional leadership to leadership, because at the end of the day,
That's what it is. Right.
PBL, it is what you're doing in the classroom. That is everything.
I was at a school that I was coaching leadership. We were doing learning walks and we were visiting classrooms for folks that don't know what that is. I think on the 5th visit, there was one teacher that became very friendly. And she came up to me. She said, "Hey, George, would you mind if we chat?" I'm like, "Sure." And she's like, "Well, I've been teaching for 30 years, George, probably before you were born." She said, "Why does my principal have to go to my classroom?" Well, he's the instructional leader. Instructional leader? I thought he was just a leader. People use that synonymously, but he's the instructional leader. Why can't he just sit in his office and wait till I need him? Why does he have to come visit me? And that's what we're working with in some places.
Yeah. The culture that exists or doesn't exist that's based on trust in schools. And I think that's so common.
So now we're going to go to technology before we wrap. Delia, artificial intelligence is showing up in schools. I'm sure in your work, it's in lesson planning, emails, even walkthroughs. How do we build trust with staff while also introducing tools that might feel impersonal or even threatening?
My last year as a principal was COVID, or maybe the year after, but talk about complete dependency on technology. And I think it's doable with the TK through 8. My teachers were amazing and certainly definitely depended on technology to help me help them on getting things done that I needed to get done as a principal. And I wish there was like ChatGPTs of the world. Teachers are solid at teaching their kids how to use tools and giving them guidelines for how to use them. Because if we look at our future, our job is to prepare our kids for the future, right?
And the future is now.
I'm at USC, and I think one of the strong messages that we receive daily is, how can we replace you with AI? And I'm like, you have to be thinking that way for your future students to ensure that they, A, know how to use the tool, B, some of them are building them, which is incredible, but allowing your students to be creative and showing you what they can do with them, and also tinkering with them. If you're not 100% confident with your abilities to do them, use them anyways, and show your students that it's okay to mess up. It's okay to, like, I'm not sure. It's okay to see what these technological tools can do, because we can't just talk about them as the future anymore. They're here and they're not going anywhere. And we have to learn how we can ensure that we're preparing our students for using them on a daily basis. Like, they're already being used now. That's just the truth. People are using them now. And that was one of the first questions I received from my students this year was, is it okay if we use AI tools? And the conversation was great, because it was like, and how do you see yourself using them? And these are grad students. So the age range doesn't matter here. It's about how you're going to use them and how are you going to leverage ensuring that students are learning research skills too, balancing those two things. So it's definitely a conversation that's happening today in classrooms across the board. So it's needed.
What a perfect way to end our conversation. Delia, let's put this up to God. How can people contact you to speak at your school, conference, or leadership event?
I'd say the easiest way to get in touch with me is to shoot me a DM. If you're on Instagram, I'm always accessible there. Also over email at dr@frominsighttoequity.com. I am always on social media. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I hear from a lot of you. You tag me when you're reading a page off my book, and it means a lot to me because I know it resonates with you. So any of those things, also signing up for my weekly leadership newsletter that I send out every Monday morning, and they're all linked up on my Instagram page.
That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast.
Whether you're a teacher or administrator, you lead by walking alongside your students and your staff. You teach them what to do, you model for them. Let's say you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, and you bring in a coach or a resource, you learn alongside them. Does that make sense? Now, the second thing is this. Give your people feedback, not pushback. Whoever you push back on, whether physically or verbally, they're going to do it right back immediately. And if they're intimidated by our position, our status, they're going to do it behind our backs and ruin our programs. My guy. I want to leave you on this note. Trajectories can be changed. When I was in 10th grade, here's a snapshot of who I was in 10th grade. There's a rapper named Rakim. I'm not sure if you guys know about Rakim, but he used to say, it's not where you're from, it's where you at. And I played that on my headphones at 16 years old every day until I believed it. And I'm showing you this because I'm seeing versions of this throughout American schools. This is your reality of what you have to face. If I can do it, any kid can do it, but they have to work hard. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with Jorge Valenzuela.